Start recording in just a...
All right, we're good to go.
Noted. My camera's not on, hey?
No, it's not on.
Okay.
I'm here for that.
All right. How is everybody? How many people are here? 6, 7. Okay, it's going to grow.
We're good, thank you.
Lovely.
How are you guys?
I say, Sherida, nice to see you.
I'm good. I'm load shedding.
Oh no.
So it might kick me out. I'm hoping it won't.
Yeah, I hope it's good. See you, Ravi. There we go. Okay, it looks like my video doesn't want to show me. Nope, not showing me. Not showing me. Mr. David Jacobs, evening. John Muller, hi there, sir. Nico?
Thank
Andre?
you. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you.
Good evening, Sean. Thank you.
Good evening, Sean.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you for joining us tonight. So just for tonight, right, we've noticed that a lot of people are winding down towards the end of the year. Less interviews or less meetings are occurring, and everybody's getting ready for the festive. So we are not exactly getting ready for the festive, but we are gearing towards more of educating our existing shareholders, and we'd like to focus on that, especially even in tonight's meeting where we are right now. So what I'd like to do is I would like to start a small video here. It's about 14 minutes long. And it's very important because it's able to tell the story of 2 or 3 months worth of study in a very short space of time. So if you don't mind, I'd like to open that video for you so that you can have a grasp and an understanding more so to what a startup company goes through, and a little bit more understanding around the landscape of a startup company prior to going to the market, establishing a market fit. And it just adds some dimensions to how people think about Ark4Verse in the stage that it's in right now. So I'd like to share screen and get that started. Everybody good to watch the video quick?
Yes, please.
Yeah,
Yes.
please.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
All good. Thank you, Sean.
All right, lovely. Yep. We'll have our own videos as well pretty soon. Here we go. So credit to John Coogan there on YouTube. I think he did a fantastic job with this video. And just going to do a sound check. Can somebody give me a thumbs up if they can hear this?
There's an odd phenomenon in Silicon Valley that no one really talks about. Startup employees often...
All good.
All good.
Great. Okay, I'll continue.
make more money than startup founders. It's counterintuitive because tech YouTubers love to focus on billionaires like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, but the vast majority of startups fail. And when they do, the founders get nothing. Meanwhile, thousands of employees at high-growth startups are becoming millionaires every single day. So what do the most successful startup employees know that everyone else doesn't? Well, I've broken it down into 8 steps to help you get rich at a startup. Without getting lucky, of course. First up is actually picking which startup you want to join. If you can hop on a rocket ship, you'll be immensely wealthy in no time, but wind up at a startup that fails to launch, and you'll probably make nothing and quickly be back on the job hunt. So selection is critical. But how do you know if a startup is the real deal? Well, you basically have to think like an investor. Is this startup going to solve a big problem? Are the founders extremely talented and hardworking? Can this be a viable business long term? It's kind of a terrible situation, to be honest. In order to really win as a startup employee, you not only need to hustle to land a job offer, but you also have to think like an investor and try and predict the future of a tiny company working out of a garage. But this is the core of every successful employee's journey. They believed when no one else did. just like those early investors. So what should you look for? Well, first off, the founding team needs to be solid. Great founders can't afford to just be smart. They also have to be incredibly hardworking. So you need to dig into their previous experiences and future plans to make sure everything checks out. Does it sound like the founders are just a bunch of hustlers chasing the latest hype wave? Or do they seem genuinely passionate about the problem? Could you see the team sticking it out when times get tough? Or will they bail? You also need to assess the quality of the core problem that the startup is trying to solve. Could you see yourself using this product or recommending it to a friend? Does it seem possible to even build what the founders are describing? The company's mission needs to sit nicely at the intersection of ambitious but doable. Fortunately, you don't have to do 100% of this work yourself. Unless you're joining a team on day one, they probably raised a bit of money from investors, and those investors have hopefully done their research. If you see a bunch of big name investors scrambling to invest in a hot startup, that could be a sign that working there could prove lucrative, but not always. See, sometimes the founders are lying to everyone, including their investors. So you have to stay vigilant about avoiding frauds. There were employees who worked at Theranos for years before the fraud was uncovered, and they walked away with nothing. You don't want to spend years of your life grinding on a project that goes nowhere just to wind up empty-handed. So how can you avoid joining a startup that's destined for failure? Sadly, you can't just Google these things, but there are ways to consistently pick winners. Let's compare two high-profile biotech companies, Theranos and Moderna. By now, everyone knows that Theranos was a fraud and Moderna was a massive success. But it wasn't always that way. See, if you were a talented scientist looking for a startup job in 2014, Theranos looked pretty good. Elizabeth Holmes had just been featured on the cover of Forbes magazine, and the press absolutely adored the company. If you just trusted the Google results, you could easily end up working for a fraudulent company and wasting years of your life. Fast forward 2 years to 2016, and once again, listening to the broad media coverage of startups would lead you astray. See, by this time, Theranos had been exposed as a fraud, and the media was on high alert, so they went out looking for other secretive startups that could potentially be frauds. The result of this search was another spectacular misstep. They claimed that Moderna could be the next Theranos. In hindsight, we can clearly see that this was a phenomenally bad call. Moderna's valuation soared from $1 billion to over $100 billion as they delivered exactly what they promised. So just reading the headlines would have led you to go work at Theranos and pass on an opportunity to work at Moderna. Insanity. Lots of people didn't make this mistake, though, and they made millions of dollars in the process. The solution to this comes back to the importance of team. Theranos was founded by a dropout and had no major Silicon Valley investors backing the company. Moderna, on the other hand, was founded by a Harvard professor and backed by one of the best biotech investment firms of all time. So when you're trying to decide if a small startup is the real deal or not, it always comes down to the people involved. Great people create great companies, but they also think long term, and that's something you'll need to do if you want to make it at a startup. Moderna had been working on mRNA technology for over a decade before they found the right application and really took off. The best founding teams are willing to grind for years before seeing real results. Anyone who tries to build a startup to get rich quick will be in for a world of hurt. It just never works out. So when you're assessing the company, you have to look to the future. The company might be extremely small right now, and the product might barely work at the moment. But if there's a seed of something great there, it could all pay off massively. This ties into strategy around compensation packages, which we'll get to soon. But you'll never get a huge chunk of company stock the first day you show up to work. You have to earn those shares over several years. So if you don't have a long-term mindset, you'll burn out before having an impact. One mistake that startup employees often make is underestimating the growth that can occur at a really successful startup. Many people look at the generous pay packages at big tech companies like Apple and Microsoft and assume they can compare those directly to smaller startups. That's a big error, though. See, big tech might be able to grant you stock worth $1 million, but the odds that your stock becomes worth $10 million is very low. On the other hand, fast-growing startups often see their valuations more than 10x every few years if they're really onto something. Now, obviously, there's more risk associated with joining a high-growth startup. Things could flatline, a new competitor could emerge, or the team could just fall apart. But if you pick well, the total economic upside is nearly limitless. Once you've found the right company and convinced yourself that it's going to be huge in a few years, you have to actually negotiate your offer. And just as there is a risk trade-off between working at a big established company and a small scrappy startup, there's also a big risk trade-off in the structure of startup pay packages. Startups are always cash-strapped. They aren't profitable yet, and the team is often working hard to find product market fit. That's a big part of the reason why they offer shares in the company as compensation. It would be impossible to get a talented engineer to leave a cushy job in big tech and take a massive pay cut if there wasn't a substantial upside. In general, the stock that a startup grants early employees is meant to offset lower cash salaries, but there's always room for negotiation. Sometimes people have big families to take care of and simply can't afford to take pay cuts, so they need more cash up front to join a startup. This usually results in a smaller stock option grant. But if you're really optimistic about the company, it can make sense to try and lean in the other direction. Ask the startup to give you as much equity as possible and keep your living expenses low while you grow the business. If you play your cards right, that incremental bump in equity could wind up being worth millions, and you might not actually need to give up that much cash to get it. There are, of course, other ways to get a larger stock grant at a startup. The more critical your job is, the more equity you'll get, with some early executives earning 3 or even 5% of the total company. Basically, the earlier you join, the more you'll get, because that's where you're taking the most risk. Joining early isn't the only way to get bigger stock grants, though. Technical roles are usually in higher demand, and that means more stock for early engineers. It's not always easy to switch career paths, but if you're young and willing to work for it, developing an in-demand skill set will pay off massively when you eventually join a company. Management skills are also valuable, even at early-stage companies. If you're someone who can come into a startup and help scale an entire division of the company, you'll be handsomely rewarded. Startups are tricky because often you'll need to be willing to get your hands dirty at the early stages and build things yourself, but then quickly evolve into a good manager as the company grows. This is extremely hard to do right, especially for founders, but the most successful startup employees I know have always had the foresight to prepare for what's next. So you found a great company, landed the job, and now you're looking at an offer letter with a bunch of legal jargon and can't figure out how much your stock is actually worth. Don't worry, you're not alone. Stock options are an incredible invention, and in many ways, they're a big part of why Silicon Valley has been so successful. But stock options are unfairly difficult to decipher for startup employees, so let's untangle them. Founders can calculate their ownership extremely easily. When they start the company, they divide up the shares, and that's what they own. Investors also have it pretty easy. They buy their shares at a set price, and then they just need to know the latest share price to value their positions. But startup employees have a much harder time judging the value of what they're given. See, in bigger tech companies, employees are usually given restricted stock units, or RSUs. These are real stakes in the company, worth actual money on the day they are granted. And since these big companies are publicly traded, it's fairly simple for employees to sell their stock for cash whenever they want. But early stage startups are much more complicated. Instead of actual stock, employees are given the option to buy stock. This is done to avoid upfront tax burdens. If a startup gave you $1 million of stock up front, you'd have to pay taxes on that $1 million immediately. If the startup went bankrupt the next year, you'd wind up with nothing but a massive loss. It would be terrible. So instead, startups give employees stock options that are, at least in the eyes of the government, worthless. You heard that right. You could join the hottest startup and get a massive stock option grant, but when you send in your taxes, you'll tell the government that they aren't worth anything yet. That's because these options merely give you the right to buy the stock at a future date at a set price. Now, the price is determined by what's called a 409A valuation. And with a name like that, it should be obvious where this valuation comes from. That's right, the government's tax code. So basically, a team of independent accountants tell the government what the startup is currently worth for tax purposes. And that's the price you get to buy your shares at in the future. There's a problem though. See, that 409A valuation is typically much lower than what investors pay for the stock. And it's way lower than what the founders think the stock will be worth in a few years. So how should you value your options? Well, the first way is to look at the difference between the 409A price and the share price that investors most recently paid. If the 409A valuation says that each share is worth $10, but investors just paid $50 per share, you can reasonably expect to make $40 in profit per share. But that doesn't tell the whole story. See, it's very rare that companies wind up being worth exactly what investors paid years earlier. Typically, they either take off or go bankrupt. So if you're confident that the startup you're joining is going to become massive, you should treat your stock options like gold, because they could wind up being worth millions. That's inevitably what happens when startup employees hit it big. They get a bunch of stock options at the very early stage that have an extremely low price, and then every option is worth hundreds or thousands of dollars when the company goes public. But all this focus on material gain misses an important point. The reason that these startup employees wind up making so much money is because they really have a massive impact on the startup success. Startups are all about people, and it doesn't matter if you have a visionary CEO presenting to packed theaters if the team isn't building a great product. So once you get your stock options, you have to work hard to make them valuable. It might be possible to get a nice equity grant at a big tech company and spend 4 years basically doing nothing. But at a startup, you will kill the company, get fired, or both. There is a silver lining here, though. See, most of the time, stock option grants have a vesting schedule. This means that you don't receive the stock options up front. You have to work for them. Typically, the stock grant will vest over a 4-year period, and you won't get anything if you leave the company within 1 year of joining. This is called a cliff, and it's meant to stop people from joining, collecting options, and then immediately leaving. The beautiful thing about stock is that after you've earned it, say by spending 4 years of sleepless nights growing your startup, you'll have that stock forever. This means that as the company grows, you can still make lots of money if you hold on longer. And this really does happen all the time. Facebook more than 10x the stock price after going public. Lots of early employees had left the company by then, but they still made a killing on their Facebook stock. There is another problem though. It's not always cheap to exercise your options, especially if your startup hasn't IPO'd yet. Your stock grant might be worth millions of dollars on paper, but it still might cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to actually exercise the stock options. Remember, you didn't get actual stock when you joined, just the right to buy stock at a later date at a set price. Fortunately, there are solutions to this problem. Some companies will offer what's called a cashless exercise, where they basically give you a 1-day loan to buy the shares and sell them in the same day. You don't have to put up any of your own money, and you get the full value of your stock options immediately. There are also investors who will loan you money to exercise your stock options in exchange for a small portion of the upside. This can be a win-win scenario if you're strapped for cash, but still believe that the options will be worth a lot in the future. Riskier options exist as well. You could mortgage your house to come up with the cash, but if the stock crashes, you could be in a world of hurt. So be very careful if you're taking out a loan to buy stock options that is backed up by anything other than the value of the options themselves. Sometimes companies will extend what's called the exercise window to let employees hold on to their options longer without needing to exercise them. This is great because early employees can spend 4 years working at the company, then move on, and still make money from their options when the company eventually sells or goes public down the road. No need to find the cash to buy the options on their last day of work. People don't often talk about what happens after you've worked at a hugely successful startup, but they should. If you're an early employee at a big success, you can kind of write your own ticket. Sometimes you'll have enough money to just sit on the beach and drink pina coladas for the rest of your life, but it's always more exciting to see someone double down and dive right back into the startup world. Although maybe after a few pina coladas. This is the real benefit of making an impact at a successful startup. Everyone will want to work with you. We've all heard about the PayPal mafia. Lots of people pay attention to what those co-founders went on to do. And that's reasonable given that Peter Thiel started Founders Fund and Elon Musk built Tesla and SpaceX. But there's an entire class of early PayPal employees who went on to have massive impacts in Silicon Valley. They didn't need to continue working, but they did anyway because they wanted to build the next generation of technology companies and solve real problems. Big, ambitious projects are extremely hard to get off the ground, but having a major success under your belt can unlock an entirely new set of opportunities. No one would have given Elon money to start a rocket company before he sold PayPal. And I've talked to dozens of successful startup employees who went on to start ambitious companies after cashing out of a successful startup. So congratulations, you're now ready to be incredibly successful while you're working at a startup. But there's still one major question. How do you actually land the job? Well, I've mapped out a simple 3-step process for landing a new job quickly in this video here.
There we go. Let me see if I can. I really want to get my video working. Did everybody enjoy that?
Yes, very much. It's as if it's been written for Ark4Verse.
It's
Thank you. Yes.
yeah, it's extremely relevant, right? Because of, you know, what kind of landscape we're in, what kind of risks we face, and also the fact that the most important message in there was where he said it doesn't matter if you have a good CEO, it's about the people, right? It's about the people. And that's why we're taking this time to, that was 15 minutes, right? That 15 minutes was able to cover so much of a spectrum of kind of like what we are going through. And that was only in 15 minutes. So we've got a couple of new people on the call. John Muller, would you mind unmuting?
Yes, thank you.
Hi, sorry, thank you. Good evening again. Could you maybe tell me a little bit about your background? Just a, short and sweet, and if you felt like that video brought you any value to a call like this.
Thank you very much. I've been invited by Renette Swanepoel to attend to this. I'm a civil engineer by profession, in my 50s, and I've been working in consulting engineering for over 30 years. And I just venture into, I've got more time at my hand. I scale down on my work, and I've got more time to do things, and I'd love to learn more from what you're doing.
Okay, all right. Oh, wonderful. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank
Finally
you very
got my
much.
video working. I'm sorry, guys. I had it on the wrong camera. Yeah, so I think just to cover something that makes us extremely unique is the fact that we've all come to learn that education itself, that's the heart of Ark4Verse. Its product endpoint is education. And what we are doing is we're going to monetize that point instead of product A, B, C, D, E, F, G. We want to create an exciting and adaptive learning interface with a learning management center. For the first time, giving every learner and educator a position to earn from the growth of the whole system. And that's what makes it really special. Okay, that's number one that makes it special. Number two is we have an extremely unfair advantage, which is we know people. So we know what people are, how people are moving, and what they're prepared to do and what they're engaging with. Right. So when it comes to market fit, a lot of investors or the big venture capitals are going to look for, does this project have market fit? And that's something that projects can only do after they've made their product and start marketing it. And it's unique for us because we already know what kind of market fit we have. We know that once this is out there, we've already got an audience ready to take it, use it, spread it, share it. It's an extremely unfair advantage. We need to leverage that unfair advantage as best as possible, just like Apple, Google, Amazon did when they launched the iPhone. No details about the iPhone were released first. No spec sheet about the Tesla vehicles were released first. And it's very similar to kind of how we're doing this as well, is we cannot put our spec sheet out there prior to, having everything secure to make sure we build it. In the following, before I touch on that, anybody have any questions or comments about the video or anything I've just mentioned?
The time that it must have taken to put that video together with all those international stars and all those international clips was so well done and so well convincingly put together that, yeah, it's impressive. And as somebody said earlier, the message is loud and clear.
He's good, eh? He's very, very good. There's a lot of passion behind that video. I wonder if we can't reach out to him at some point, because very educational. I'm very impressed, and most of all, like, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed actually just watching it again. But how he was able to take, like, if I go and study various resources, he was able to take so much information and cram it down into 15 minutes. Very, very amazing. We need to do more of that. I've created a number of scripts which are also going to help us understand where we are, what we need to do next, etc., etc. And I'm experimenting with a lot of content packages right now, which I've just signed up for. So the content side is so important because it's able to do a job far better than, you know, Stefan or Nico or Sean explaining something to somebody for 3 hours. And if they watch a video, they kind of just feel like they get it because they get to see Robert De Niro or Mark Zuckerberg or, you know, somebody on there, or Elon Musk. And that's because familiarity is so much more powerful than a good idea. And we need to leverage that. So we're moving in that direction. Yeah. Can you notice from this video how they talk about, you know, stock options, how founders are able to break down, you know, pieces of the company into something tangible? How can they raise money along the way? And so the way we're doing things, actually, it brings a lot of benefits to investors, especially the early ones, because the early investors are taking the biggest risk. The ones who come later take less risk. The ones who come along much later take far less risk because now, you know, the product is already there. Money can be used for scaling, and you've already got this cash flow money roll going. So what's nice with us is we've introduced a price point. We've been upfront about the stage of the startup and what stage is next. If anybody understands the stages of startups, you've got these, you know, it's kind of like a baby, right? It's a baby. If you have the ideation stage, it's where someone has an idea and that idea is about to be born. So it gets born into a baby. Then it goes from ideation stage to ideation to planning to commitment. I'm not going to go beyond that right now because we are here in planning. And once we move over to commitment, then there's no turning back. And we want to make sure that we have everything needed to carry out the commitment stage fully. So that's why things are, you know, they feel a little bit slow. We're busy educating everyone around the table. That's why videos like this are going to be more used. And we actually have a lot of sessions that we're holding in the evening. So we have 2 per week right now, where we get together, we discuss, we educate more, because what we really do need, and I would say probably by the end of January, what we really need is more of us who understand where we are and what needs to happen next. Because, you know, when essentially I'm not the only owner anymore. The shareholders are owners. The people who are putting in their time and effort and energy are owners. This company is being given to everyone. So as an owner, you can do a lot more for your company, right? So it's not Sean's studios, it's not Stefan's studios, it's not Nalani's studios. This is something that's so strong and so powerful and so easy once it's deployed that we don't need somebody to sit at the top and own it. It's I'm going to drop one more. I'm going to drop a golden nugget here. It's the first ownership consensus protocol project. And I can't elaborate what that means, but ownership consensus protocol. So if you look across the whole blockchain, you've got decentralized, you've got proof of stake, proof of work, consensus protocols. We've got an entirely unique and very different one that we're going to be using here. So yeah, with that being said, do we have chats? Am I missing out anybody that's saying anything in the chat? No, good. No, good. Awesome. Awesome. Okay, who's feeling fruitful? Who's feeling that they'd like to say some more words, ask some questions? We're right here, and I think we've got some time. We can take this for the next 30 minutes if you'd like to. We normally keep it down to 30 minutes. So we can either cut that off there. Nico, feeling fruitful? Love it, man. And yeah, would anybody like to have a chat or have a chat after? It's gone really quiet here. Am I still connected?
It seems like people are very hesitant to ask. It is still early days, and the network is slowly building. And I think once we've got more people on board and we get the process rolling, then there'll be more interest. What would be the marketing angle that we would approach on rolling it out from here onwards?
Yeah, the marketing angle with regards to the current shares or the end product?
The initial, the current shares, the initial process, the startup side.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah. So still on a private one-to-one relation basis until we have all of the relevant disclaimers ready for the website and those purchase points. So when there's a public purchase point, the relationship changes. So right now it's kind of, one-to-one. Everybody here on any one of these calls knows somebody from, from project or know each other. Once we put up a website and we make this thing available to 100,000 people, the relationship changes, and obviously so too does the framework with regards to our liabilities, because you're getting a different audience, a different customer, a different mindset. So for now, we are still keeping it on a private relationship basis until we've managed to get more of this base education across out to our shareholders and and all of our project collaborators. If that would make sense. I can answer and I can extend on that question though. If we think of our marketing strategy for going to market, let's say we're ready to go today, right? So we've boxed it, it's looking good, it's working, and we want to take it to the market. I created a job vacancy last week and I only ran it for 4 days. I based it on a commission only basis, commission only, social media, salesperson. We had 1,543 applicants for commission only. I can only say how good the news is to get a result like that, and kind of also how sad, because that's how much a facility is needed for people to earn from. Right, in 4 days, over 1,500 people actually responding because they want to work. We have so many people to help with this. So yeah, that being said, Mr. Jacobs, did I answer your question, or would you like to comment or extend?
That's excellent. Thank you very much, Sean. That's yeah. Let's just keep the momentum going.
Yeah, and we're moving very quickly, actually. I'm glad things are starting to slow down, because only 2 weeks ago, I picked up the phone and said, and I was like, Nalani, you guys Nalani Fatah, you got to stop the meetings for a minute. Like, we got too many going. Yeah, we're growing at about, I would say, between 3 and 10 networkers per week that we are engaging with new people. So we're always growing the footprint early on. Once we've entered the commitment and development stages, we've got market fit covered, we've got the market acquisition strategy covered. And those are the 2 most challenging parts for any startup, is can they sell it and how fast can they move a product? We've managed to do a ton of that work over the past couple of years, which puts a feather in our cap well above any of the competition. So for that, very, very grateful. Yeah, Mr. Jacobs, if you have more questions, Mr. Muller.
Yes, thank you, Alessine. I'd love to ask, what is the product or service of the company that is offered in the market?
Educational products.
Okay.
At first, educational products at first, which we are preparing. Okay, so we prepare them, we distribute them, and we distribute them with an inference learning model.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like having a teacher, a virtual teacher helping you with your studies.
Okay.
And that's at first. What we really want to happen here is we want our system to be modular enough that the Department of Education can bring their courses. TVET colleges can bring their courses. Institutional training can bring their courses. And you said, oh, yeah, sorry. Right, yes. So basically it's a system rather than a product.
Thank you. It explains. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Yeah, really lovely questions. Mr. Tyrone, you're very quiet tonight.
Yes, just a fly on the wall, observing, listening. That's also a part of learning.
Yeah, it is. Okay, so all that being said, I'm going to end on a positive note. It looks like I've got to go and do some engagements with an NPO called the Ark, based here in Cape Town. And they're doing a lot of phenomenal work with regards to rehabilitation, empowerment, motivation, and they're happy to connect with us as well. So there are just way too many connections to bring into a meeting like this and to articulate in a short space of time. So we've been blessed. A lot of people have brought so many connections that we're exploring. We're going to be winding down as well, so that Stefan and all the teams can have a little bit of a break. So our next big meeting, I believe, will be on the second Tuesday of January. The first Tuesday of January will be on the 2nd of January, which is like the day after New Year's. So that's maybe not the best time to ask everybody to get back together, but around about the 9th of January. Stefan, are we correct with that?
Yeah, the next 8 o'clock meeting will be on the 9th, Tuesday, 9 January.
Yeah. So the next Tuesday, 8 o'clock would be the 9th January. As and where we have the kind of like training sessions, okay, training and discussion sessions, we will still be having those, okay, and my number is still available to be called between now and then. So we'll have those. If you're interested in perhaps joining any of those discussions, then please do text me, Stefan Nalani Fatah or Andre, and to be included in those sessions between now and then. So if you've got nothing better to do in the festive, you're more than welcome to join us for some work. All right. Okay, that's it all from my side. Would anybody like to take the floor?
We're very quiet tonight.
I would like to wish everybody well, and let's take a good rest and start the year fresh.
2024. Yep, we've been preparing for a long time. I like that video, how it talked about the one company that popped up and the other one had been planning for 10 years. That is very close to where we are. We're the slower one, but we're going to win the race, and that is extremely important. So awesome. I'm looking forward to next year and delivering a couple of announcements here. We do have large people looking at the project. One of them will inevitably kick us into the next phase, and once that is done, timelines will be circulated, and those timelines will be met, and we will reach every goal that we have set out over the past few years. I say, Nalani, thank you for the cross. Love it. Says no, daar kyk jy liggies nie. Master Stefan, thank you. Would you like to end the recording?
So let's end. See everybody then on the 9th of January. Have a good festive season.
Okay. Would anybody like to ask any questions outside of the recording?
No.
Okay. All right.
No, thanks. We're still good, Sean. Thank you.
I'll say, okay. Thank you, Mr. Andre. All right. Awesome. Catch up to you guys soon.
Thank you
Good
very
night.
much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.